Welcome to this year's Maine Food Waste Solutions Summit. My name is David Hart. I'm the director of the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions at the University of Maine. It's a pleasure to be hosting this important gathering. At the Mitchell Center, we feel very fortunate to work with so many great partners, some of whom will be talking today about their innovative work. We're especially grateful for our collaborations with the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, including many DEP professionals, as well as Commissioner Loisem herself. Today, we're fortunate to be joined by Suzanne Miller, the Director of DEP's Bureau of Remediation and Waste Management. Suzanne has been a dedicated environmental professional for decades, right from the start when she was doing her undergraduate degree in environmental science at the University of Delaware. Go fightin' blue hens, right up to the present. Please join me in welcoming Suzanne to the summit.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Suzanne Miller. I'm the director for the Bureau of Remediation and Waste Management at the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. In addition to managing spills and cleanup sites, as well as waste storage handling and disposal sites, the Bureau also manages sources of waste through our sustainability and food waste diversion program. Food waste diversion is an important and timely topic right now. Programs are popping up around the states as food waste is an important contributor to our waste streams, taking up limited landfill space. Food waste diversion is important to our economy because returning nutrients to the soil allows us to reap and benefit from strong and healthy crops. Maine's food waste hierarchy was developed in 2016, and food waste management is currently under debate in the Maine legislature this year. The department fully supports and encourages food waste diversion. Maine DEP has provided close to $1 million in funding through our waste diversion program. Grants that have benefited about 50 programs, including programs that upgrade and develop organics management and recycling programs, enhance food scrap collection efforts, support composting efforts, and formulating new partnerships with communities. Maine DEP also administers the Maine Compost School, hosting over 1,200 students from 50 states and 43 countries around the world. Maine DEP has also provided several food scrap recovery workshops in 2022, and we're looking to do some more this year. DEP really appreciates the Mitchell Center's leadership in bringing this summit together. We hope one of the outcomes today is enhanced communications, partnerships, and initiatives that will benefit new pilot projects, incorporate new regions of the state, and enhance infrastructure around Maine for food waste diversion. In closing, we have dedicated and enthusiastic staff who are able to assist anyone with questions. We encourage you to reach out to us, and we hope you enjoy today's summit. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Suzanne, that we really appreciate your participation, and we appreciate so much working with all of your team at the DEP. My name is Suzanne Lee. I'm a faculty fellow at the Mitchell Center, and I will be your facilitator today for the summit. We appreciate you taking time out of what looks like a very beautiful Friday outside. But we promise you that we have a lot of value-packed information for you today. My fellow facilitator is Professor Travis Blackmer. My role will be to facilitate our presenter guests on the Zoom, and Travis will actually be facilitating the chat, since we know that oftentimes there's a lot of questions, and all the questions today will be on chat. So Travis will be managing that part of the day. So thank you, Travis. And again, welcome to everybody. Before we get started, I wanted to just put up a quick slide, since we have really intended this to be an educational event, and we want to make sure that everybody sort of starts off with the same understanding of the food waste facts. So starting with the always shocking statistic that about 1/3 of the food that is produced that is never eaten. Here in Maine, according to REFED's 2019 estimates, that means that approximately 213,000 tons, or about $1.27 billion worth of food is wasted. But that makes it the largest part of our waste stream here in Maine is food at about 30%. And it's really, the sad part of it is that the majority of the food, according to research, is actually still good and edible when it's thrown out. And we know from the Good Shepherd's data that 1 in 8 adults and 1 in 5 children here in Maine is food insecure. So that makes that food waste even more tragic. Finally, to make matters worse, the 97% of our food waste is actually going to landfills, as Suzanne mentioned, with taking up limited space, and most importantly, creating methane gas, a gas that's a greenhouse gas 28 times more powerful than CO2, and as well as leachate that threatens our waterways. So, in conclusion, or just to simply summarize, food waste wastes a lot of money. It wastes a lot of good food that people need to live, and it threatens our environment and our planet. So, that is sort of the problem. But the good news and why we're all here today, actually, the next slide, is because we have some really terrific food waste solutions, and reducing that food waste can actually bring about major financial benefits for the state and for actually individual households. The same, it can bring about human benefits in terms of feeding more people in our state, and it has environmental benefits. So the really good news is that we are making incredible progress. As Suzanne noted, legislation now that's being discussed, progress across the country with food waste solutions, as our presenters this morning will be sharing. So our very first presenter will be, we're delighted actually to have her participating again in this year's summit, is Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, the U.S. representative for Maine's 1st congressional district since 2008, and a recognized food waste leader. She has been with us participating, and this is the 3rd year of our Food Waste Solutions Summit, and we appreciate her support. Just this week, Shelley, along with Republican Congressman Newhouse, relaunched the Bipartisan Food Recovery Caucus to support food waste solution work. So we thank her for her continued support and advocacy for the food waste solutions. Today, actually, Shelley is out of the country, so she was able to meet earlier this week with 2 of our student interns, Kate Flynn and Eddie Nakami, and they were to be able to talk about food waste solutions and especially legislative work that she's doing.
I'm Kate Flynn. I'm a 3rd-year political science major with a minor in legal studies at the University of Maine.
And I'm Eddie Nakami. I'm a 1st-year ecology and environmental sciences student at the University of Maine.
And it is such an honor to introduce our summit keynote presenter and special guest, U.S. Representative for Maine's 1st Congressional District, Shelley Pingree. Representative Pingree has played an integral role as a national food waste solutions champion in her time representing the people of Maine. Thank you so much for making time to speak with us today to share insights on solutions to the food waste issue as we look to the future. And with that in mind, given all of your work and research with food waste, what would you say is the most important basic food waste insight that you could share with our audience today?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Thanks for the incredible work that you do. I can't tell you how proud I am to have my state so engaged on this issue of food waste, and to have students like you guys who are actively thinking up good ideas, working on it, and trying to move forward. So thank you so much. If there's one insight I've sort of gained over the years, first off, people are completely shocked when they hear that we waste around 30% of the food in this country. They can't even fathom it. And you have to go through and explain to them, we waste it at home, we waste it in the farmer's field, we waste it in transportation, trucking, at the grocery store, everywhere else. And I think that's the second part of the insight, is it's a comprehensive problem. It's not like you can just say to people like, oh, don't throw away that carrot, and we're all good. We really have to tackle it on all fronts. And I know the students and everyone else who's been working on that understands that, but that's the thing you have to emphasize with people. It's complicated, and we can all play a role. And if everybody does their part, we can really change this dramatically. The other part of it is making sure everybody understands when we waste food, that's also a reminder of the number of people in this country who go hungry every day. And the idea that this ends up in a landfill creates more issues related to climate change and doesn't go to hungry people who need that food.
That's great. Thank you for that insight. So I know that you've done a lot of work on, legislature that's specifically bipartisan, and we wanted to bring up the Food Date Labeling Act, and ask, how does the Food Date Labeling Act help American consumers?
Well, it's really interesting. I think everybody knows about this situation. Everybody, picks up a package of food and says, oh my gosh, look at the date. Now, does that mean I have to throw it away, or can I still eat that? And, in most households, there's somebody who says, oh my gosh, we got to throw all that away. And then there's another person that says, oh, but it's perfectly good. And the fact is, if it's a can of soup, if it's a whole lot of different foods, you won't even notice a difference. Maybe on a bag of crackers, it's going to be a little bit more stale. Some things like, deli meats or something that really does go bad, you need to respect that date. So our simple goal is just to make sure that that is an understandable label, and that we make them uniform. Right now, it's literally up to the manufacturer to decide how they want to label things. And that's why you can't figure out when you look at it, is this already gone bad, or is it just saying, it should be eaten by now? So our idea is that we would have two labels, one that would make it very clear, best if used by, and the other one would be used by. So, some sort of system that's completely clear and it's uniform across the system. That would save a lot of fights inside people's, pantry between family members. But more importantly, it is seen as the best return on our investment in terms of how we could reduce food waste. Because not only does that label apply at home, but on a grocery store shelf, even though it still may be good, you could have a whole shelf wiped out of something that wasn't selling fast enough, or the dairy counter or anything else might change dramatically. So that's really our number one bill. It's bipartisan. I sponsor the bill with Representative Newhouse, who's a Republican from the West Coast. And I've never had anybody disagree with me. It just gets sort of stuck in the bureaucracy, is it a FDA rule or a USDA rule, but we're going to get to the end of that. We are going to resolve this and solve the problem.
Thank you so much for that response. I like how that tackles both food waste and food insecurity. Kate?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for addressing the universal confusion over labels. I know it's a controversy in my own home. And legislation like the Food Date Labeling Act is so important in empowering Americans with clarification and information on their food and what they can do to work together with business partners and their own communities to combat food insecurity and food waste. Farming in America is another critical component to both these issues. And from your time running a farm to being elected to the Maine State Senate, to your time in Washington as a representative now, you've accomplished so much for America's farmers. And today we'd like to hear more about how food waste is impacting farming and what are some legislative efforts to address farming and food waste challenges alike.
Yeah, we have a variety of bills that'll come up this year. And because 2023 is the year of a farm bill, which is really all the language related to rural America. I mean, that's everything from housing to broadband to agriculture to nutrition, like SNAP benefit programs. It's really everything about rural life. But we do hope that that's a place where we can include more language this year on food waste related issues. And again, we're looking at a totally comprehensive solution to everything. And some of my colleagues have bills related to things like supporting composting, providing more opportunities for conservation programs to cover composting on farms so that there's assistance to farmers and others who want to do that, and things like municipal composting, which is growing and a huge opportunity. It has a whole, there are a variety of bills that we hope will get included one way or the other. And I have a comprehensive bill called the Agriculture Resilience Act. That's everything from the impacts of climate change related to sequestering more carbon in the soil, pasture-based livestock, research, a whole variety of things. But we also have a section in there about food waste. And we hope that we have support to farmers who want to allow gleaners to come into their fields, people who will come and get whatever produce doesn't get picked up, more support for schools that want to do food waste and recovery programs at school. I feel like educating young people about, especially like elementary school kids. I mean, if they get engaged in like putting their extra food on a share table, or they have composting at their school, or they learn some of the facts around food waste, that's the best way to make sure those kids develop good habits. But more importantly, they'll go home and yell at their parents if they see them throwing a carton of strawberries into the trash. They'll be like, whoa, you can't waste food. So I always feel like that's a really good way to do it. So liability issues, again, sort of everything in a comprehensive way has the opportunity to end up in the Farm Bill. And in a divided Congress, in a sort of partisan year, we're all hoping that that's the one bill we can get across the finish line, because everybody has something they want in the Farm Bill, and we're all working hard on it.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight, and we're all really excited to see how the Farm Bill progresses this year. Eddie?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much for those comments. I mean, yeah, what an important piece of legislation. As we wrap up here, I wanted to ask just kind of a closing question. Do you have any advice to the Mitchell Center team on where you'd like to see our food waste efforts focus in the future?
Oh, you guys have done such great work, and I really appreciate it. I mean, just making it a focus, having this conference, I think this is the third year, but bringing people together to talk about their success stories, because, you know, sometimes people have a good idea and aren't sure, like, will that work? Or is there somebody else already doing that? Lobbying the Maine legislature, which I know you're already doing. I mean, it'd be great to get some laws passed in Maine. You know, we call states the laboratories of democracy. So everything you get done in a state makes it that much easier for us to move forward on a federal level. I think sometimes the most important thing that we all need to do is just keep making this issue front and center for people. There's a really good, you know, food waste hierarchy, which I know you guys know about, which sort of helps people to understand the problem better. But I'll go back to something, you know, that I was thinking about in the beginning. When I first heard about food waste, somebody brought it up at a conference I was at like 10 years ago. I thought, oh, wow, you know, that's too bad. We shouldn't throw away food. But gosh, there's so many big problems to work on in the world. Like, you know, just, I was like, that's just nice, you know, like something we should do. And then the more I learned about it, I mean, not only do we have so many people in the world who go hungry and could use that food, but also that it's a huge cause of climate change. Most food waste ends up in a landfill, which costs municipalities a lot of money, but it also turns into methane gas, which is a huge issue. And as climate change becomes a bigger and bigger problem, food waste is one of the bigger contributors. So in a sense, the more you can talk about it, the more you can put it out there. It helps people with their personal awareness of it. It also helps them to think, like, what should we be doing in public policy to make sure this isn't happening anymore? So that's my big picture. Like, just keep talking about it and keep reinforcing it to people so it doesn't get treated like, you know, a little pat on the head. Oh, how nice, you're working on food waste. No, this is a major climate issue. And if people are going to care about climate change, they got to care about this.
Well, thank you so much for that response. And again, thank you so much for making the time to talk with us today, sharing your insight, and just for your leadership on the food waste issue.
Well, great to be with you. You guys are all my heroes. Thank you very much, Suzanne, for your leadership on this. And thanks to all the students that are working so hard. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You know, we really appreciate, again, Congresswoman Pingree participating, and Kate and Eddie, you did a terrific job. I think helping to bring to light a lot of important issues about the legislation and just some of the simple things that we should remember about food waste. I think also you and Shelley did a great job of leading into our next keynote presenters. Speaking about climate change and food waste, we are so grateful today to have Linda Bregan and Margaret Batting from the Environmental Law Institute. ELI is a national nonprofit that creates tools and helps states and communities fight food waste and climate change. Linda Bregan is a senior attorney with ELI, where she has managed a wide range of environmental law and policy projects for over 20 years. With her expertise in industrial ag, food waste, toxic waste, and water, she's a highly sought after advisor on a range of environmental issues. Margaret Batting joined ELI as a research associate in December 2021. Margaret works on municipal climate change and waste reduction work, including ELI's Food Waste Initiative, where she develops tools for cities to achieve their climate and waste goals. This morning, Linda and Margaret are going to explain a little bit more in depth about how climate change and food waste are connected, and they'll highlight some new tools that they have to fight both. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the University of Maine Mitchell Center for Sustainable Solutions for inviting us today to this wonderful summit. Special thanks to faculty fellow Suzanne Lee for reaching out to Environmental Law Institute. That was a great interview with Congresswoman Pingree. Students, you guys did an awesome job. Her leadership in Congress on food waste is so important. And she's right, it's one of the few issues that hasn't been polarizing. And now we just need to actually make some progress on it. Before we jump in, I want to provide just a little more background on Environmental Law Institute. We are a nonprofit, as Suzanne said, nonpartisan research education center. We advance environmental protection domestically and internationally. We don't lobby, we don't litigate. What we do is conduct research, training, policy, legal analysis. We publish books and periodicals, and we do convenings on a really wide range of environmental law and policy issues. We started working on food waste back in 2015 when the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, picked Nashville as a pilot project to look at solutions to reducing food waste at the local level. And they asked Environmental Law Institute, because I lived in Nashville, to serve as the director for what became the Nashville Food Waste Initiative. That pilot lasted way more years than anyone anticipated, and it's now a permanent project of a local NGO. We continue to serve as senior advisors to that project, and so does NRDC. But in addition to our food waste work, we've expanded over time to work more generally on zero waste and municipal climate work, both in Nashville, but also around the country. One thing that became really evident to us early in our work in Nashville is that mid-sized cities, and I'm going to say in the middle of the country, in the Southeast in particular, but this very well may be true in Maine as well, they are understaffed and under-resourced when it comes to addressing climate change. Now, I will say I peeked at Portland's Department of Environment. They look pretty well staffed, but Nashville, for example, has one full-time equivalent in the mayor's office and only 4 in general services. But you compare that, for example, to Seattle, very similar size city, they have over 30 people working in a dedicated office of sustainability. So what we realized from working in Nashville is there's a lot of talented municipal staff out there who don't have the time and the resources to do as much as they would like to do or what their communities would like them to do. So we started developing model ordinances, executive orders, policies that they could just take off the shelf, as we say in Nashville, plug and play, and skip the research and the drafting. We do that for you. And then we also provide commentaries and background information so cities can adapt the models to their own needs and preferences. But we also do other tools as well. And that one of which we're going to focus on today, and that's the toolkit for incorporating food waste into municipal climate action plans. So that's the general background, and let's dive into some details here. So why should cities care about climate change and food waste? As we know, cities are on the front lines of addressing climate change. They have large carbon footprints, and they are already experiencing the impacts of climate change. And with new estimates, which you've probably seen, that international targets may not be achievable. Rather than 1.5 degree Celsius increase, we could see increases as high as 4 degrees Celsius. So the adaptation challenges that cities are going to face are even more severe than anticipated. We are also well aware that there is federal gridlock when it comes to regulating greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, this is a gridlock so bad that an existential threat that we've known about for years cannot be addressed. So in part, what's happening is that cities and states are filling a gap that's being left at the federal level. And in fact, hundreds of US cities and thousands of cities worldwide have pledged to reduce their carbon footprints and develop climate action plans to achieve those targets. Many are participating in something called the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy and other voluntary initiatives. And again, this is great, right? But there are strong indications that cities are unlikely to reach their targets. And we have one of the studies that Brookings did that showed this. There are a couple of others as well. So we need to keep looking for opportunities to take further action. When we went and looked at a whole lot of climate action plans, we realized that most, or at least I would say at this point, maybe many is the right way to say it, are missing actions to address food waste. And when you take that fact together with the fact that cities are also responsible for waste management, and on average at 20% of the waste in landfills is food waste, you realize that cities have yet another reason to address food waste. And also cities, and this was mentioned earlier, are responsible in part for addressing food insecurity in their communities. And we'll talk about that connection a little bit more to food waste in a minute. One last note is that although Congress has not been able to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, much to my surprise, I admit, it recently enacted the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act, as you know, and those provide huge subsidies to states and localities to address climate change. So this funding opportunity just further bolsters the important role that states and cities are playing in addressing climate change. And I know Claudia is going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Margaret Batting, to talk more about food waste and climate nexus. Margaret?
Thank you, Linda. So we touched on this at the start of the summit and Linda got us into it a bit, but why does food waste matter? So estimates vary, but up to 40% of food in the United States is wasted, which leads to serious consequences when food is discarded. All of those inputs used in producing, transporting, preparing, and storing that discarded food, all of those resources and energy goes to waste too. So around 14% of fresh water, 18% of cropland, and 18% of farming fertilizer is used to grow food in the US that is ultimately never consumed. So the majority of food waste, as we've already talked about, is sent to landfills and incinerators, which brings additional negative environmental impacts. And food waste in the US represents 24% of landfill cover. And then in terms of economic cost, the value of food waste represents $408 billion, and that costs the average American $1,300 annually. And then considering the social justice implications, while many households are experiencing food insecurity, nearly 90 billion meals are going uneaten or unsold every year. So now we're going to focus a little bit on the connection of food waste and climate change in particular. So food waste exacerbates the climate crisis with its significant greenhouse gas footprint. The production, transportation, and handling of food generates significant carbon dioxide emissions. And then when food ends up in landfills, it then generates methane as wasted food decays, which is an even more potent greenhouse gas, which is an urgent priority for climate change mitigation. And then as demonstrated by this right-hand graphic here from EPA, the carbon emissions of equals 42 coal power plants. And that figure excludes those landfill emissions from food waste, which would add even more to that total. According to Project Drawdown, food waste reduction is the 4th highest impact solution for climate mitigation globally to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius in line with tons of emissions. And for context, the highest ranking solution on that list, onshore wind turbines, represents 143 gigatons. So as you can see, food waste is both a major climate change contributor and a major climate solution. So next, what are the benefits for municipalities in taking action to reduce food waste in climate action planning? As discussed, food waste is a high impact solution for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But cities can also increase their resilience by establishing strong food rescue networks to more effectively overcome climate-related natural disasters. Then other benefits are improving public health and advancing environmental justice. Reducing food waste reduces the harmful impacts of landfills and incinerators and reduces the need to expand and create new facilities, which are often disproportionately sited in lower income communities and communities of color. And the US EPA's food recovery hierarchy, which was already shown, but on the right hand here as well, breaks down approaches to food recovery from most to least preferred. And food waste prevention is at that very top, followed by food rescue, which means recovering and distributing surplus food to those who need it most. And then after prevention and rescue is recycling, which is diverting food waste from disposal through use, such as composting, for example. And I believe I will pass it back over to Linda to talk more about the toolkits and the specifics.
Great, and we'll try to pick up the pace because I'm mindful of time. As we mentioned earlier, we did decide to develop a tool for cities to use to incorporate food waste actions into their CAPs. I'm just going to say CAPs, climate action plans, because most plans did not address food waste at the time that we looked, and we just wanted to make it as easy as possible for municipal staff to take action. So we provide model provisions organized by category, as well as a menu of options to pick from, and we provide links to learn more and to examples of what other cities have done, because in my experience, cities like to talk to each other. They really understand what the challenges are on the ground. Margaret, if you can get the next slide. So our methodology was super straightforward. We did a sample of 36 cities, tried to get big cities, small cities, cities that were on the cutting edge, cities that hadn't done much yet. And we sampled those plans. It was online research, but then we also did a whole series of qualitative interviews as well. And we came up with an extensive list. We organized it by the EPA hierarchy. And then we tried to make it as user-friendly as possible by using icons to denote certain types of actions that might be of special interest. So if you were particularly looking for equity actions or education actions. If you go to the next one, I'm not going to spend time on this slide, but that just gives you a sense of what it looks like, what the toolkit looks like. And I'm going to hand it back to Margaret to walk through a couple of pages, being mindful of our time.
Thanks, Linda. So yes, we wanted to quickly demonstrate the types of food waste reduction strategies that cities and towns can use in their CAPs, as we had identified in the toolkit. So for that first category, the prevention category here, we have adopting an organics waste ban or mandatory diversion policy, which, as you can see, many US cities have implemented. There are several other strategies here too, including supporting residential and business food waste prevention efforts, as well as, for example, reducing food waste at schools. And then here for the food rescue category, we have as strategies establishing centers for collecting and distributing surplus food, expanding policy and networks to support food surplus donation, which we have listed several examples here, including incentive programs, implementing a supporting ordinance, and expanding food rescue networks to connect to hunger services. And then this third strategy of supporting local organizations that are doing food rescue, food security, and food justice work. And then the third and for the sake of time, I'll just highlight on this right-hand side, supporting community composting as one effective measure that can include reducing regulatory barriers to compost projects and community gardens, and providing funding and education and other types of support as well. And I will pass it back to Linda.
Thanks, Margaret. So, I think the big picture takeaway here is that many cities are missing an opportunity to both lower their carbon footprints and reduce food waste, which has a lot of attendant benefits, as we've discussed. And climate action plans are a great vehicle for starting this effort. They are just plans, but it's a great way to set this in motion. And there are so many options. There's no one size fits all. You can see from this sample list that Margaret showed, there are ones that require a lot of investments. There are ones that don't require so much investment. There's some that are quick. There's some that are long range. So if we go to our, I think about our last slide, we're not going to, go into any detail on this, but I did want to let you know about some of our food waste model policies and ordinances. So to date, this is really a project NRDC leads that we partner with them on. We have a model compost procurement policy that you can use to require cities to use compost in any earth disturbing activities such as landscaping, road building. We have a model ordinance that would require large generators of food waste to just report. That's all it is. It's intended as a first step before you might require actual diversion, for example, of food scraps. And the idea is to raise awareness among businesses in the community about the problem, to get a handle just on the scope or magnitude of the food waste problem. And then hopefully to get businesses that are having to measure to sort of realize that adage that you manage what you measure and reduce the amount of their food waste. Margaret's done some really interesting research on this that I listed under our Food Waste Initiative research brief series, just looking at the social science studies that support the adage that you do in fact manage what you measure. And I think that the last slide is just flagging two upcoming models we're working on with NRDC. One is pay as you throw, which you probably know is foundational to getting to zero waste. It requires people to pay for trash service based on how much trash they generate, so they have an incentive to reduce. We also are working on a lead by example model executive order on food waste reduction that has a menu of options that a mayor can do to manage the internal operations of a city to reduce food waste. It can be food scrap recycling in buildings, to training employees, to providing employee benefits like free backyard composters, to requiring departments, municipal departments to have food waste reduction strategies. So that's a snapshot of what we're working on and some of the tools, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Well, Linda and Margaret, thank you so much. I think that we actually do have questions, but the problem might be that we are a little short on time. So what we really commit to everybody is that we record the chat, so we have all the questions and we will facilitate, getting them to you if you maybe could help us answer them. You have done such an outstanding job of giving so much information. So I know that everybody's very excited. These are all the topics that our communities are talking about here in Maine. And so you have given us a lot of material. So we will definitely share it. And
I'm sorry we ran over. I run conferences and I hate when people do that. And I tried so hard not to, but we do have so much we want to share. Absolutely part of what we want to be doing is consulting with cities. We talk to at least a city a week. Please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.
So we'll make all those connections, and we just thank you for taking the time to put all this together. So, and for all the great work you do. So thank you. Okay. So shifting gears from climate, next up, we have are very pleased to have Claudia Fabiano from the US EPA. Claudia has been with the US EPA since 2002, and she recently joined the Office of Resource Conservation and Recovery's Sustainable Management of Food team in 2016, where she works to help communities prevent wasted food. She also leads a terrific Food Too Good to Waste peer network that we are part of, and we love it, where states and communities are encouraged to share and collaborate on food waste initiatives. So we are very excited to have Claudia joining us today to discuss a variety of successful food waste initiatives and some of the work that the EPA is doing. So thank you, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for having me. This is great so far. I'm really enjoying what I've heard from Congresswoman Pingree, as well as from ELI. And this is actually a really good segue into what I'm going to talk about today. So thanks again for having me in today's summit. I'd like to share with you some of EPA's efforts and also highlight the great work going on in communities across the US. Before I keep going, do you just see my slides? Suzanne?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. So EPA works to promote a sustainable management of food approach, which seeks to reduce wasted food and its associated impacts over their entire life cycle. Our sustainable management of food work also supports our vision to promote a circular economy. So you just heard about the climate impacts of food waste from Linda and Margaret of ELI, so I won't spend too much time on this. Just to note that EPA produced a report about these impacts in late 2021. Linda talked about one of the impacts, but just to share some other ones, to put it into terms we can really grasp a little bit more, the resources that go into a year of food loss and waste from farm to kitchen, not including waste management, are equivalent to enough water and energy to supply more than 50 million homes and an area of agricultural land equal to California and New York. I will not spend more time on how big this issue is. I think by now that has been clear, and you're probably here because you know. But why should we reduce food waste? So there's so many reasons, right? There's conserving the resources that goes into producing, distributing, retailing, and storing that food. There's reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There's feeding people, creating jobs, building cleaner communities, and saving money at all levels. So in September of 2015, USDA and EPA announced a goal to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030. We still have a really long way to go to achieve this ambitious goal. So EPA's work focuses on preventing the wasting of food across the supply chain and improving equitable access to healthy and nutritious food. We also focus on increasing the recycling rate for all organic waste. So not just food waste, but also yard trim and other organics. And we support enhancing policies to support the prevention of food waste and increase organic waste recycling. I'll just note that there's a lot of action in this area. In 2021 alone, 25 states proposed food waste legislation. So we're really happy to see the increased attention to this, but as ELI pointed out, there's still a lot of opportunity for cities specifically to be tackling this issue. So I'm looking forward today for the remaining time to hearing from a variety of leaders who are tackling the problem of wasted food in Maine from many different angles. I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is helping consumers waste less food at home. According to EPA's data, about 40% of food waste comes from households. So while we may all think that our personal contributions to this massive issue are minor, they really do add up to a lot of wasted food and a lot of wasted money. So our recent consumer efforts are inspired by the need for a national behavior change campaign to help consumers waste less food. We've been working on developing a blueprint that lays out an approach for developing and implementing a national wasted food prevention behavior change campaign. It will contain recommended next steps for campaign development and deployment, including funding needs, recommending behaviors to target, pointing out existing and additional materials that are needed, what audiences to target, and other information. So we're really hopeful that federal funding will come through for this national campaign, and this blueprint would provide a jump start on developing that. But we know there's a lot of communities, like many of you who are on here today, who are working right now to develop and implement campaigns to help consumers prevent wasted food. So to help those communities, we'll soon be releasing a social marketing toolkit, which will include customizable off-the-shelf materials from 5 agencies that state, local, and tribal governments can use right away. Suzanne alluded to this, but EPA also leads the National Food Too Good to Waste Peer Network, which convenes state and municipal governments and nonprofits who are working to reduce food waste with a focus on consumers and households. If you'd like to participate, feel free to send me an email and I'll put that in the chat later, and I'd love to add you to it. I also want to highlight that there's several universities working on various aspects of this issue, such as, of course, the University of Maine, who put on this summit today. Thank you. As well as Harvard's Food Law and Policy Clinic and Ohio State, who've been a leader on consumer food waste and conducts regular national household surveys, giving us some really important data that's needed in this space. And just this week, EPA announced 2 grants totaling $1.5 million to 2 universities, Drexel and UNC Chapel Hill, to develop, apply, and test innovative and creative community engaged approaches to reduce household wasted food. So we're really excited to be investing a little more into this critical space. So our work at EPA really builds and amplifies the great work being led by communities around the country. So I'm just going to pause and highlight some of them. Over the last decade or so, dozens of communities around the US have implemented consumer-facing campaigns aimed at helping people save money and make the most of their food by reducing their food waste at home. These campaigns aim to raise awareness and drive consumers to change behaviors around things like shopping, storing food, and cooking to help them eat everything they buy or obtain otherwise. Experts from state and local government and the NGOs that support them participate in EPA's peer network and share their expertise, research, and lessons learned with the other 250 or so members. So through this information and resource sharing, folks in other communities have been able to stretch their resources further and build on existing work that's going out there. This network that I run is how I met the organizers of today's summit, and I feel really lucky to be here sharing just a few examples of the great work in the peer network. Really what you see here on the screen is just a small slice of the dozens of amazing programs represented in the network. So as part of EPA's forthcoming toolkit, 5 agencies, which is Hamilton County Resource in Ohio, the Natural Resources Defense Council, Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, and Stop Waste in Alameda County in California have generously agreed to share their collateral for other communities to customize and use in their own consumer-facing campaigns. You may recognize the Oregon Don't Let Good Food Go Bad campaign in the upper right corner, as that campaign is what inspired all the materials being used in this National Food Waste Prevention Week, which hopefully you've seen some of those materials in the past 4 days or so. I love their sassy little veggies teaching us how to prevent food waste from spoiling. And you may also recognize the Save the Food ad telling us that we each waste 290 pounds of food per year. Those Save the Food ads were developed by NRDC and have appeared all over the US since 2016 and have helped raise a lot of awareness around this issue. So the campaign materials from these 5 agencies will be accessible through our website for state and local government and NGOs to download and customize by replacing logos and URLs. Designs and wording should stay the same, and we're recommending that a community pick one set of materials to use in order to have a cohesive campaign with a consistent look. EPA is so appreciative of the hard work that these and many other agencies have done to add to the knowledge base, advance the conversation, and drive consumer behavior change. And we're excited to showcase some of these campaigns and share them with communities across the US. EPA also is also developing a social marketing toolkit to help communities develop composting campaigns that we also expect to release in the next month or so. This toolkit will provide guidance to communities that want to either launch a new food scrap composting campaign, increase participation in an existing program, or reduce contamination in their compost collection stream. And this toolkit is specifically designed for local composting programs that offer curbside collection or drop-off locations for residential food scraps. Just like the prevention one, it'll include customizable collateral from several agencies who have offered to share their resources with others for their use. Pictured here are a few examples of that. We have the ads from King County in Washington State that are part of their Compost Right campaign. And on the right, you see materials from Vermont's Let's Scrap Food Waste campaign. EPA also works on many other efforts, including working with the private sector, delivering tools such as our Excess Food Opportunities Map, which will be updated very soon with new data. We provide national data, such as our National Wasted Food and Anaerobic Digestion reports, and we conduct research related to wasted food. We have several resources for communities, such as trainings, case studies, and guides related to waste management, including food waste, that can be found in our Model Recycling Program Toolkit. And I'll put some links in the chat when I'm done talking. You may also have heard, and Eli mentioned this as well, that EPA has more money to give out than we ever have before. It's actually pretty spectacular right now how much money we are trying to give out. And I want to highlight 3 funding opportunities that can address food waste. The bipartisan infrastructure law provided unprecedented funding. That's $275 million total from 2022 to 2026 to support state and local waste management infrastructure and recycling programs. There's two new programs, the solid waste infrastructure for recycling and the recycling education and outreach grant programs were launched at the end of last year, and the application deadlines for this year have recently passed, but this will be a multi-year program, so stay tuned for future opportunities there. EPA also has a climate pollution reduction grant program, one of EPA's big new Inflation Reduction Act funding opportunities. This is a two-stage program with $250 million in non-competitive planning grants, followed by $4.6 billion in competitive implementation grants that will encourage states, air agencies, municipalities, and tribes to create and implement comprehensive climate action plans. Eligible policy and program options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and accelerate decarbonization in the agricultural and natural and working lands and waste and materials management sectors could include sustainable materials management and circular economy activities like waste prevention, waste reduction, recycling, and activities related to food waste and composting and applying compost. So I'll put in some links at the end with more information on these funding opportunities. I really encourage you all to check them out and also look at ELI's resources on including food waste in climate plans, which are really complementary to this funding opportunity. There's also several USDA funding opportunities as well, and we share those through our EPA funding webpage and a newsletter that goes out about every month. So thank you so much for having me here today. I know that was a lot of information in about 10 minutes. I have a lot of links here, which I will also put into the chat, which will probably be easier for you to save. I also want to note that EPA has 10 regional offices. Maine is in EPA's Region 1 purview, and Chris Beeling of that office is here today, and she is fabulous and very knowledgeable in this area. So if you don't know her yet, please do reach out. She is your local EPA contact. That's all I have. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of the presenters this morning. And I'll stop sharing my screen and put these things in the chat as well.
Okay. Claudia, that was terrific. Thank you so much for sharing all this great information. I feel like, you know, we really have the all-star, like the food waste all-stars here, our keynote presenters. So I think, you know, again, we offered that there could be questions, but I'm a little bit afraid that we're going to run out of time in our 2 hours to get everybody. So we'll just make that offer. Please keep asking the questions, because we will keep record of them. And we will try to address them all as a follow-up. So, but thank you again, and you know, for all the great work.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. Let's see. With that, so, you know, we really are grateful. Like I said, they're really the all-stars that we had presenting, because they're not only creating solutions, but they are, as you can see with the grant programs and just being here and agreeing to participate, wanting to actually help everyone to use the tools available. So we appreciate all that. And in our next section, we're going to actually move on to Maine's food waste solutions progress. So you've seen this upside down pyramid now a few times. The EPA has a version. This is Maine's own food waste hierarchy. And I think it's a pretty good symbol of the type of progress that we're making, you know, across the country. So with the EPA hierarchy, then with Maine's own, that we are basically moving to the top. So a lot of the initiatives, if you can, I don't know if you can read it, but it really starts at the top with reducing food and then feeding people, feeding animals. Maine's, the difference between Maine's and the national one is that composting, the other version talks about other uses for food waste and industrial, and then composting, but we actually consider composting quite important and have it higher up in the hierarchy. So we are making progress in working to the top and doing a lot of work on reducing unwanted food. So with that, let's talk about Maine success stories, because our first presenter is actually very familiar with that effort to end food waste. So leading off, we're happy to have George Parmenter, who's from Hannaford Supermarkets, Ajo Delays. George leads the health and sustainability initiatives for Hannaford. George has led the zero food waste work specifically at Hannaford, which has resulted in that chain being the first grocery retailer in the country to achieve zero food waste. So, but let's just let George tell you the story, and welcome, George.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to get my screen shared here. Really excited to be here today. What a lineup, huh? As Suzanne said, my name is George Parmenter. I work with Hannaford Supermarkets. I lead the sustainability efforts for the brand. I think we'll be able to make up some time here because I noticed the context for food waste has been covered pretty completely, so I won't spend a bunch of time on that. I have slides and we'll go through them fairly quickly. So a little bit about Hannaford Supermarkets. I hope you guys are familiar with our brand, but we operate in the Northeast, 186 or so stores. We're a conventional grocer. By that, I mean Hannaford strives to be everybody's grocer. Hannaford's strategy is to offer the best in fresh and local products in a convenient shopping experience, and I would be not doing myself a service if I didn't say also that we strive to be a responsible business, enabling our associates, customers, and communities we serve to live healthier and more sustainable lives. However, we are here to talk about food waste today, so let's just get right to it. In April of 2021, we announced a major milestone in our food waste work. This accomplishment is one of great pride for our organization and our associates. As you'll see shortly in the following slides, this milestone is achieved through a lot of people working together every day to make the right decisions on how to deal with food that we can't sell. It involved streamlining some processes to make them easier to follow, and engaging with some really tremendous community partners that we have, some that you'll hear from today, to solve the challenges that we've encountered along the way. And to be clear, this is not an endpoint for us. I've been working on food waste in our business, probably better part of a decade. And while this is this milestone achievement is a good achievement, it doesn't mean it's the end of the journey for us. We think there's still plenty of work to do in this space and other areas in mitigating our climate impact and reducing waste. We know that our customers and generally the public are increasingly aware of the connection between the food system and climate change. So we recognize that and take our responsibilities very serious in this area. So a little bit about food waste and some of the context and how we got to this accomplishment. Here's a slide that you guys have seen in various forms multiple times this morning. I'm going to just really quickly skip over it, just noting that it's an important, food waste is important because it's a societal issue, it's an environmental issue, and there are economic impacts. We've already talked about that. I will highlight again for us, though, that in our business, we're a food company, so this was important for us to address. Not only is it an environmental and climate issue, but it's also there are people in our communities that don't know where their next meal is coming from. And it's a really serious issue amongst adults, and even the numbers are even more startling when we talk about school-age children. So just wanted to punctuate that. Share with you that we do use the EPA's food recovery hierarchy. Just a quick flyover of how this works. So source reduction is all about preventing food waste. For us, it's about ordering correctly and handling food correctly and keeping cool stuff cool, making sure that the food inside of our control stays in controlled atmospheres. When we do have food we can't sell, our number one priority is to get that to people in need. So that's feeding hungry people. When that can't happen, our stores are encouraged and authorized to donate food to feed animals. We'll talk more about that. As Suzanne pointed out, industrial uses and compostings might be switched in the hierarchy for us. Industrial uses is things like recycling fats and oils and meat rendering and biodigestion in our case. We'll talk more about that. Composting, of course, is on the hierarchy. And then landfill being the space of last resort for food waste, which we are in our operations able to avoid completely at this point. So how do we do this? Well, we certainly don't do it alone. We look for guidance from EPA and USDA. We also look for guidance from the Food Loss and Waste Protocol, which is published protocol on how to measure and record food waste. So we do actually measure and track our food waste and report it publicly, and we also report it internally to our stores. Feeding America is an important connection point for us and all of the community partners that are Feeding America affiliates, who we donate food to locally from our stores. Our associates, I would be remiss if I didn't include them. They're an important, a very important piece of this puzzle for us. And then finally, AgriCycle Energy, who operates biodigesters in Maine and New York and collects food waste from our stores, is a key partner for us. So takeaway here is we don't do this alone. And our associates, I always like to call this out because without them, none of this really would be possible. So inside of our organization is a network of folks making hundreds of decisions every single day, supported by the home office where we do tracking and reporting. We have store leaders that are communicating and coaching on best practices and keeping people close to the processes inside our store that allow this to be successful. And then, you know, for us, the unsung heroes are the maintenance associates in our store. These are the folks that collect the recyclable materials, including food and trash across our stores. What I found is they end up being the unofficial gatekeepers to what gets recovered and what doesn't get recovered. And in our business, they really end up being the difference between executing good programs and executing great programs. So we owe them a huge kudos for their work every single day. So back to the pyramid, source reduction is an important area for us. It's really all about focusing on preventing food waste through ordering practices and having stepped up routine deliveries to the stores. So fresh product gets delivered to stores multiple times a week. We have really good inventory control systems. And then the way we educate our associates on handling food, you know, making sure that we're handling food carefully, keeping cool food cool, just making sure that we limit the temperature variations and keeping everything operating the way it should operating. And we're pretty good at that. So when we do have safe edible food we can't sell, our number one priority is to make sure that we get it to the local food pantries, food banks, and soup kitchens in the communities we operate. Again, we're going to hear from one of those this morning. And so those relationships exist right across our network. And we try to focus on these local relationships to rescue as much fresh food as we can from our stores and get it out to those partner associations. Last year, this amounted for something like 25 million pounds of food rescued from our stores and donated. So we're really proud of that. We even at that, we think there's still area for improvement, and we work to improve those numbers every single day. When we can't donate food to people, we donate to animals. As I said, our stores are empowered to create local relationships with small scale livestock producers. These are small scale producers. Think about, you know, school age kids with a 4-H relationship, raising a couple hogs, or other people that are just doing this in their backyard. We're happy to donate food scraps to help those processes continue. And it's all about, for us, if you think about the hierarchy, this is about using food waste to create more food is the idea behind this. Last year, that amounted to 11,000 tons of food waste donated to local small scale farmers. And then finally, the last stop for food waste in our organization is when food isn't safe for people or animals, everything else, including food in package and including some stores where meat rendering and oil everything goes in our green food waste recycling bins, which you see here. These are picked up a couple of times a week by AgriCycle. They truck the material to their anaerobic digesters. They combine the food waste with the waste from the dairy farm, which is cow manure mostly. Like I said, they pick up twice a week, transport the food. They put it in digesters. And if you haven't seen a picture of a digester, here's one. So basically the way the digesters work is it kind of percolates the food and the waste from the dairy farm to create methane. This methane is captured in these big domes, and then it's siphoned off and used to run generators to make electricity at their locations. So that's our story. And I think, Suzanne, if I can find my way to share back with you, I will do that. Oh.
Yep, that's perfectly good. You can just
okay, stop sharing.
Yeah, if you want to stop sharing, that's terrific.
Yeah, so thanks, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, George. We have actually this year formally recognizing you as a Maine success story, but definitely aware of all the work that you have done. And I think nobody should misunderstand. While it seems, obvious, oh, you have extra food, get it to the pantries, you have extra food, but as George, his slides show, there's a lot of work that has to be set up to create that kind of system to make sure that food goes to the right place. So I know that we probably have questions, and I was remiss in mentioning this, but we do have an after hours at noon time. So if the questions, and it looks like we're not going to be able to get to them right during the session because we're really getting behind. But you're all welcome to stay after, and we can try to answer the questions in that extra half an hour that we kind of planned as an overflow. And we are definitely holding on to all the questions, and we'll get them answered either today or in the future. So George, thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership at Hannaford to make zero food waste a reality. And, I appreciate that you're also continuing your efforts, knowing that there's still more to be done. So thank you. So next, we are very fortunate to have the inspiring Natalie Morallo, who is a food scientist, chef, and educator, and she is also Preble Street's food program director. Natalie combines a passion for social justice and sustainability with her culinary education to build nutrition and food security right here in our communities in Maine, while also doing a fantastic job at reducing food waste. This is the type of success we believe we can learn from. So we'd like to welcome you this morning, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. I'm just going to start sharing. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about food waste with us today. I feel really fortunate to be presenting with such a great cohort of advocates. I've worked in the food industry for the last 15 years, and limiting food waste has always been a huge goal of mine, so it's really exciting to be here with organizations working on so many different aspects of this issue. Lots of what I'll be talking about at this point has already been covered and touched on, but I hope you can incorporate some tips from the work we do at the Food Security Hub into your own home. I'm the Food Programs Director with Preble Street. Preble Street's mission is to provide accessible, barrier-free services to empower people experiencing problems with homelessness, housing, hunger, and poverty, and to advocate for solutions to these problems. Within food programs, we prepare and distribute prepared meals, around 2,000 a day, and food boxes to individuals experiencing food insecurity. Preble Street Food Programs recently moved to a new location in South Portland, a food security hub rooted in social justice. Our role in the supply chain and our goals for food system sustainability meant that preventing food waste was a primary goal in our design and methods. While the Food Security Hub isn't completed yet, we're well on our way to preventing food waste. With staggering rates of food insecurity, preventing food waste is very close to our mission and it is essential to improving food security in Maine. We heard from Congresswoman Pingree earlier, food security and food waste are strongly linked, and preventing food waste can improve food security in our communities. Preble Street's work is an example of that. Our goal at the Food Security Hub is to provide healthy, nutritious, seasonal meals prepared with Maine-grown foods to individuals experiencing food insecurity. The only way we can afford to do this is by valuing all our food resources and preventing food waste. Within Preble Street, we have a really unique opportunity to work with food waste. We're at the end of the supply chain for humans, and you saw in the hierarchy right here, we're in the second category to feed people right before animals. All of our things that we aren't able to convert into food do go to a pig farmer or to the compost. But we're really at the end of the human supply chain. So we receive donations from dozens of local organizations such as Hannaford. And the food we receive might not be eligible for retail, but it is usually still nutritious and healthy. It just requires that we engage with it in a different way. Our warehouse team spends time every morning after picking up these donations from our partners, sorting the donations, culling bad apples, looking through strawberry clamshells, picking through bad mushrooms. Spending the time to sort and process these donations allows us to improve the meal quality and diversity of the foods we're preparing. It also prevents further food waste when it enters our building. By removing one piece of rotten fruit from the bunch, we are able to extend the life of the other fruit. Because as cheesy as it sounds, the old adage is certainly true. One bad apple really does spoil the bunch, and we see that so much in our work. I love implementing simple solutions for maximum impact. Simple, uncomplicated practices that can be used in your own home. Most of the things we do are basic food waste preservation behaviors implemented on a large scale. Some of our previous presenters have mentioned some of these things. We're just doing it at a much bigger rate. At the Food Security Hub, we have prevented over 300,000 pounds of Maine-grown produce from ending up in the landfill this year. But on a smaller scale, you can use these same practices in your home, leading to cost savings and improved household sustainability. For example, when my strawberries are starting to go bad, I wash them, trim them, and throw them in the freezer. I do this for most food, breads, desserts, fruits, and vegetables, and it helps me save money, especially with rising food costs. Reframing how we work with food and even how we look into our refrigerator can lead to cost savings and environmental benefits. I want to share a couple stories about how we prevent food waste at the Food Security Hub. I'll also scroll through some pictures of some of the meals and things that we prepare. Food waste in the United States is huge, and restaurants and meal preparation sites similar to ours are often responsible for huge amounts of food waste. At the Food Security Hub, for example, we make all of our own jam. This is a great solution for us because it means that the thousands of PB&Js we make each week are made with nutritious Maine-grown fruits while limiting our cost for jam. These cost savings from sorting and processing foods has allowed us to purchase other items we would not be able to afford. It allows us to purchase higher price items by utilizing the things we receive from the community, and these cost savings help us purchase other Maine products, in turn supporting the Maine food system. Preventing food waste helps us support a local sustainable food economy and gives us flexibility. For example, in one of the efforts that we did to save food resources, we were able to start purchasing local pasture-raised eggs from an Amish farm in Maine. So we're able to increase the quality of the eggs while using some of the ingredients that were coming through us through the supply chain. I really encourage you to try these kind of practices in your own household. Food costs are rising, and what kind of flexibility could you use to prevent food waste in your home? I also want to share that preventing food waste is a really creative adventure for us. It encourages new recipes, new practices in the kitchen. A couple of weeks ago, we received 5,000 pounds of clementines. We only had a short window to use these, a couple days before they were going to go bad, and we sent them out fresh to all our meal sites that we were able to. We also processed thousands of pounds of them and made clementine jam and clementine cake. Not only did clients love the clementine cake, it was packed with vitamins and freshly baked with Maine grains, providing a sweet treat with a little extra nutrition. This summer, we received over 40,000 pounds of tomatoes from Liberation Farms. We received these over a 7-week period. We were completely flush with tomatoes, and we had to get really creative about our menu design and our processing efforts. We roasted tomatoes, made sweet tomato jam, made sauces, dehydrated tomatoes, salsa, you name it, we made it. You don't have to be a chef to do these things either. If you purchase too many tomatoes and they're starting to go bad, roast them whole in the oven and freeze. If you don't have the time to roast them off, put them in the freezer and you can cook them up when you want to use them next. Roasting tomatoes also increases the lycopene, so in your food waste prevention efforts, you're also increasing your household's nutrition. These are the things that make me really excited because they're really simple, easy solutions, and there's so many different aspects. They're environmental, they're cost saving, they're health benefits. Working with the food at the end of its life really helps us to be creative and improve the nutrition for our clients. that's the end of my stories, but I just wanted to say, if you're interested in learning more, I encourage you to come to volunteer with us. If you're interested in incorporating food waste practices into your daily life, our volunteers are often a part of these practices. Our volunteers play a pivotal role in our processing efforts, and we couldn't do it without them. We even host specific processing parties, for example, processing thousands of pounds of pomegranates with a bunch of other individuals interested in the same thing, or dozens of flats of delicious ripe strawberries in June that only have a day before they're a little bit overripe. Preventing food waste does not have to be challenging, and it should be fun, easy, and accessible. That's really what we're trying to do. We really want to use food waste as an avenue to improve our food system and create a sustainable food system for Maine. So that's all I have today. Thank you so much for all joining and coming to listen to all of us talk about food waste and what we can do within Maine. And this, I'll just show you, this is one of our produce donations that we receive weekly. So it's a good example of some of the things coming into the building every single week.
Oh my gosh, Natalie, thank you. Inspirational, I picked the right word. Kudos to you. And, you know, we've been working on food waste for a while, but, you know, so many of your ideas are new and exciting, and, you know, just the energy and enthusiasm you bring to the cause, we really appreciate it. And, you know, that's, you know, I'm sure that's why you inspire your team and, you know, really, you know, encourage these practices. So thank you very much. And again, I'm sure that we have questions, and I think that that call out to volunteer with Natalie, it's a great way for you to learn about food waste and help out a community organization. So, but in terms of taking a break for actual questions, we cannot do that right now. I'm sorry, because we're going to keep moving. But again, keep the questions coming, and we will make sure that we follow up and or stay after. So next we have, we were very pleased to have Davis Saltonstall and Tessa Rosenberry. They have both, their story is moving to Maine to start a community compost business after they were studying environmental systems and working on recycling and sustainability projects in New York State. So they came here, and in 2018, they founded Scrap Dogs, which is a community compost service. And to date, they now have over 500 residents and businesses on the mid-coast. They've got to start in Rockland. They're diverting close to 600,000 pounds of food waste from disposal, and are looking, you know, planning an expansion to the Kennebec Valley region this spring. So we are very proud, you know, of this homegrown community composting effort and the success they've enjoyed. And, you know, we would love for them to share their story with you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, and thank you to everyone who's here. And it's so amazing to hear about all of the work that's being done in Maine. I think we're both really proud to be here in Maine and just to be a little part of all the food waste reduction efforts. So I'm Tessa, and
I'm Davis.
Just so you know. As Suzanne said, we're Scrap Dogs. We're a small curbside composting operation. We're based out of Rockland, but we serve right now up and down the coast between Belfast and Thomaston, and we're actually right now in the midst of expanding out to the Kennebec Valley, which is really exciting. We serve homes, businesses, schools, kind of you name it. Whoever's got food scraps, we'll come and get them. It's pretty simple. We provide containers for folks to fill up with their scraps. We pick them up, we turn them into compost, and we bring them back. We're a subscription service, so people pay by the month to be involved in the program, and they get compost back as part of their subscription if they want it. Here's one of our buckets out in the wild. We also have some drop-off sites, so if people don't want it picked up at their house, they can participate by dropping off their food scraps, trying to make it as easy as possible for people to get involved. And here are some of our feed stocks, if you will. Obviously food waste and yard waste. Down bottom left, you might recognize that kind of material. Bottom right is actually something called okara. We have a wonderful tofu producer here in Maine that we collect from that produces a soy byproduct, which is great for composting. Wood chips and cow manure. I figured the cow is a little bit closer to something people want to look at. Up until now, we've worked closely with Bole Dairy Farm out in Washington, Maine to do our composting at their farm. And that was obviously their cow. But we are expanding so much that we're actually opening our own site. We just received approval from the DEP this week, so that's really exciting. So we'll be doing more composting also out in Washington. And this is our finished product. This is what it all ends up looking like, a little bit cleaner than before. As I said, we bring our finished compost back to our subscribers, either in bags or in bulk. And if we have extra, we'll sell it or donate it to local gardens and farms.
Great, yeah, and as Suzanne mentioned, we have experienced some pretty dynamic growth here in the Mid-Coast. Almost 50 to 100% each year that we've been in operation, and are excited to be helping folks divert food scraps from landfills and incinerators to mitigate all the impacts mentioned by previous keynote speakers. So here are a couple other numbers from us. As mentioned, over 500 subscribers, 4 staff members, over at least 500,000 pounds of food waste diverted. Generally, a growing business that has led us to seek that additional DEP permit to compost even more food scraps throughout Maine. A little bit of breakdown in terms of other folks who might be looking at doing something similar to this. We pick up from, or our business is about 72% pickup and 28% drop off. The drop off we do at most local transfer stations in our part of the state. It's really convenient, and most folks have, or there's a preference for it that allows for greater accessibility. It's also slightly more affordable. Just want to mention many of our partner businesses who we compost for. If you're from or part of the region, you may notice some of them. I think Tessa's covered
this is me. Well, this is just celebrating compost. As Suzanne mentioned, Davis and I kind of have a background. We always say we're garbage geeks. We went to school and basically studied waste and waste systems. And we decided to start this business not to get rich off of composting, which I would not recommend trying, but because we really saw an opportunity to divert this resource that's been wasted, as you all know, for far too long, and also to try to have a positive impact. Even though we're a for-profit business, we try to maintain our mission to divert this material from landfills and incinerators, to reduce the carbon impacts of the material. It also is able, as it says here, to stabilize other materials that would otherwise be emitting methane. And we also care a lot about Maine's food system and soils, and compost is a great way to kind of give back to the soils that we're eating from. So kind of closing the loop there, building up the nutrient capacity and all the other good things that compost can do here locally. Obviously, you've seen this upside down pyramid about 80 times already, but we recognize where we stand. You know, we are almost the last resort as a composting company. You know, making sure that material doesn't go to landfills and incinerators. But we also see that there's so much opportunity to be feeding people and animals. And as we grow, we're trying to build more partnerships to make those connections more possible, to see, you know, if there's a food waste material that could be composted by us, but should instead be feeding animals, then we're trying to make that happen too. So trying to plug in and be part of this amazing community of people that's on this call and across the state. So we tried to keep it quick. So hopefully we'll maybe be back on track, Suzanne. But thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that is terrific. We really appreciate some good insight coming from a different area. Travis, I would just reach out to you. I mean, are there any questions that you feel like we should just answer them right now? Or, I guess maybe there's too many. We should just wait till later. Maybe you want to just let me know what you think.
So many great questions. I've been trying my best to connect with people in the chat, and George just started jumping in. So if Tessa and Davis and Natalie and any others want to jump around the chat and try to answer questions, we'll also have that extra time afternoon if anyone wants to keep chatting and dialogue. I am recording the questions, and we'll make sure we try to interface back with all of you. But let's make sure the students have some time as well.
Okay. So do you think you'll hold on to the questions? You think that's the best strategy? Okay. Well, thank you. Well, and thank you, Tessa and Davis. Like I said, I liked that part about, you're thinking, about the pyramid, the popular pyramid, upside down pyramid, which is what we all should do. I mean, I know there are a lot of people when we did our home challenge who felt like they were composting, so that was really it. But we did try to explain that one should always be, as Hannaford mentioned, to looking, okay, but could I feed animals with this? Oh, actually, could I feed people with this? Or actually, could I have found ways to not cause the excess in the first place? So we appreciate as a provider and like you who's actually thinking the same way. So so that's why you're such a success story. And, we really think you're a great example and also a terrific partner in the community. So thank you for joining us today. Okay, so now we will move forward, and I'm just going to go through this very quickly because these are some of my slides and I want just to get you to the important information. So the last session that we're having this morning is our very own UMaine Mitchell Center Food Waste Solutions presented by our interns. This slide is just to give you a sense of, we have interns presenting this morning, but we actually have 6 solutions. You'll see that the students will be presenting some of the pilots, addressing some of the solutions, but food waste tracking measuring is solution 1. Solution 2 is creating a food rescue. There has to actually be a system to get food to people who need it. So that's something we're working on. Education, solution 3. Solution 4 is really a lot of what Natalie's doing in terms of food processing. There needs to be more food processing infrastructure in the state to help reduce waste. More food donation. So we have a solution and pilots we work on in that area. And then finally, the diversion, the type of thing that Tessa and Davis work on. So is solution 6. And we generally have students at various times working on all of those. So just a selection will present this morning. You'll notice that all the pilots are stakeholder directed. So we don't do any pilots. We don't do research work in this program that's not in concert with, it's not out in the community. And also all of our work is focused on triple bottom line benefits. So for something to be sustainable for our group, there needs to have a profitability potential. There needs to be a benefit for people and needs to benefit the planet. So that's basically what you'll be seeing next. And so with the next slide, I'll introduce our student interns, are presenting the pilot updates, and they will introduce themselves. But let me just say about them all that they are some outstanding student interns who represent a diverse range of majors. These students are some double majors, some athletes. They have a number of things that they do at the university. And in addition, they've taken on this internship and go out into the community and provide this food waste work that you'll be hearing about. So we're very proud of them. So why don't we start off with Andrew?
Thank you, Suzanne. My name's Andrew McMaster. I'm a senior here at the University of Maine. I study marketing, finance, and economics. I'm a part of the Solution 1 team where we do tracking and measuring food waste in the Mountain View Correctional Facility. And then we've also had prior interns work with the Department of Corrections as a whole. So I'll move on to my next slide and take a deeper dive into it. So many food service organizations, including your home and kitchen, struggle with where to start to reduce their food waste because they're not sure where and why food waste is happening. Many food waste tracking and analytics show that the volume, type, and reason for food waste that allows you to begin reducing food waste. With rising food service labor costs and staff shortages and no time at home, Research shows that the food waste tracking has a 14-to-1 return on investment. So for every $1 spent, there's a $14 return in savings of money and time, according to a study done for the business and organization Champions 12.3. And finally, ReFed identifies waste tracking as a key action area where one of the highest levels of economic and environmental benefits. For this food waste tracking and measuring study, our goal was to work with major food service organizations, and we were fortunate to partner with the Maine Department of Corrections, who serves thousands of meals daily, but is also committed to continually improving their food service systems. My colleague worked with last year with the Maine State Prison, Women's Center, and Bolduc Correctional, while I worked solely with the Mountain View facility in Charleston, Maine, who has highlighted in Impact Justice for their exemplary approach to prison food service. With about 400 residents, they manage a garden that produced 60,000 pounds of produce last year, which supplied the Department of Correction kitchens, as well as provided donations to community food pantries. We collaborated on the study goals. Reducing food waste is a key goal to assess the study and the success of our pilot. But other goals were important as well. Adding cost information provides the financial insights, as all the kitchens work within budget constraints, and bringing awareness to the cost was also important. I'll move on to the next slide. For our study, we used paper tracking sheets that were placed near collection sites in the kitchen, and we measured the overproduction of food in the kitchen and the uneaten food being returned on trays. From there, we were able to enter the data that was collected and input the figures into a tracking platform that was created using a Microsoft Excel sheet. This gave us the necessary figures to perform a strategic analysis of how much food was being wasted and associate values to each category of food waste to determine not only the environmental impacts, but the financial impacts of their food waste as well. This study was conducted from the beginning of November to the middle of December, bringing in 6 weeks worth of food collection data. From the graphs that were generated from the Excel tracker, we were able to assess the reasons for food waste, whether it was overproduction, spoiled food from a vendor, or accidents in the kitchen. And we were also able to look at plate waste from the residents. We associated costs based on industry averages to the various food groups, such as grains, fruits, and vegetables. And with these costs in mind, we were then able to calculate and estimate the total cost of Mountain View's food waste, as well as the per resident cost of food waste in the entire Department of Corrections. In these figures, we had found that the plate waste and fruits of vegetables was the largest portion of food waste, accounting for 35% of the waste in this facility. We were able to find that on a per day basis, Friday was consistently the largest day of food waste in this facility, and this was also discussed with the Mountain View upper management, and what could be attributed to Friday being a dumping day, as they called it, where food was being disposed during the week that wasn't taken care of earlier in the week. And this is due to kitchen and health and safety regulations. Moving on, the previous Solution 1 interns have conducted similar research in other Department of Corrections facilities, and we were able to compile all of our findings and provide a snapshot of how the Department of Corrections as a whole is operating and where the largest areas of food waste are coming from. Comparing the facilities not only showcase where some of the facilities have positive practices with food waste, but also show a difference in where food waste was originating from in each of the facilities. As you can see on the graph, the Maine State Prison saw that grain was the leading category of food waste, where in the Mountain View facility, it was fruits and vegetables. Similarly, we were also able to compare the average cost per pound of food that each facility was offering and see the wide range of input costs that was varying between each facility. Throughout the course of the study, we had a large buy-in from the staff as well as the residents who are part of the kitchen staff in the Mountain View facility. That was a large reason as why we were able to see such a reduction in cost by week, as well as a total cost of the food waste, total weight of food waste, and decreasing per resident cost of food waste. Moving on, we did have some key findings that we were able to generate, and that showed that the fruits and vegetables, again, were 35% of plate weight costs. We also saw a reduction in plate weight costs of 18% during the duration of our study. The plate waste was the main reason behind food waste, as it came in at about 72% of total waste from the facility. Purchasing costs were much different in each facility, and purchase cost reductions would have been an effective way to reduce food waste costs, as the food would have been less expensive. Based on the key findings, we were able to provide some recommendations to continue the food waste diversion program. Our first recommendation would be to decrease the purchase cost. Based on the study that we had, we found that lowering protein costs by 25 cents per pound would have saved the Department of Corrections almost $2,000 during our 6-week study. We would also like to recognize the resident choice as an effective way of reducing food waste, and reuse of leftovers in a work release program saves the Department of Corrections between $40,000 and $89,000 per year. More information regarding the Solution 1 study with the Maine Department of Corrections will be made available to the Mitchell Center website. There you'll be able to find the Department of Corrections Food Waste Tracking and Measuring Pilot Report, as well as the Do-It-Yourself Food Service Tracking Guide. And I believe that is all that I have regarding my project. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time, and I look forward to any questions you have later on today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hallie Rogers. I'm a graduating senior with a double major in economics and sociology at UMaine, and I also worked on Solution 1, which is tracking and measuring food waste, and I worked both in business and consumer areas. My first pilot was with Northern Light Blue Hill Hospital, which is a smaller facility with about 25 beds. Next slide. So why hospital food service tracking? The National Library of Medicine notes that the median food waste in hospitals is around 31% for patient waste, but this doesn't take cafeteria or kitchen waste into account. ReFed also notes that there's 719,000 tons of food waste every year in the healthcare sector. So as you can see, there's a lot of room for food waste reduction that can lead to cost savings in this sector. Our goals: the objective of our project with Blue Hill was to track their food waste and recommend ways to reduce this waste by analyzing their kitchen, cafeteria, and patient waste data. So our methods, how we did it, we worked with Barb Haskell and her team, and we tracked their food waste every day for 2 months and helped them identify fixable food waste to reduce their overall costs. Like Andrew said, we use similar printable tracking sheets that their kitchen staff filled out every day. And then we also used a personalized tracker, the Excel, that you can see in the bottom left corner there, that was used for the data analysis. And our duration of the study was about 2 months as well. And we identified categories and different types of waste. Then we found recommendations to reduce this waste, and we projected the total food waste costs across the system. So our results. The largest source of wasted food was outdated and spoiled food, which comes both directly from the vendor and as well as prepared foods. We recommend that Blue Hill sells wraps, sandwiches, and salads at reduced prices when they near their end date. Work with their vendor to sort out the issue of poor product quality and substitutions, and make smaller quantities of prepared foods more often. Blue Hill also has the opportunity to reduce their food waste costs by up to 38% through reducing patient waste. And we recommend that Blue Hill does this by introducing flexible portion sizes into their menu system. So like Andrew said, we have some more online resources. You can learn more about this tracking study with Blue Hill through our website, which will be updated in a few weeks. So my second pilot was done with residents in the state of Maine, and we created a Maine Home Food Waste Challenge that lasted 4 weeks. We had people from all over the state participate. So why home food waste tracking? We know that consumers waste about 1/3 of all food purchases, and that the average family of 4 throws away nearly $2,000 a year on food waste. ReFed notes that the residential sector is actually the largest area for surplus food that ends up as waste in landfills at 37.2%, which is about 30 million tons a year. Consumers have a chance to change food waste in the US by adjusting household practices individually. Our objective for this challenge was to bring awareness to households in Maine by a food waste tracking system that could be used easily and every day. We completed this pilot project as research for an app that the Kayak team is currently developing for Maine residents to track their food waste daily, and I'll get more into that later. So how we did it. We started by creating a web form where people could sign up for the challenge, and the challenge began on January 9th, so we marketed it as a New Year's challenge, and it lasted 4 weeks. We had 85 total signups and 21 people who participated all 4 weeks of the challenge. We sent out tips 3 times a week, and we created a challenge leaderboard every week that compared what people submitted in Google Forms that you can see on the right side of the screen. So these Google Forms were sent to people every week, and they would fill out their total food waste weight, what food they wasted the most often, how many meals they ate out versus at home, and what tips they would like to help them reduce food waste. So our results, we actually did find that people reduced food waste, even though it was a 4-week study. And this was about 17%, looking at week 4 totals to week 1 totals. Something significant was produce was the top wasted product, which Andrew actually mentioned was found in his study with the DOC as well. We also thought that saving food waste costs would be the greatest source of motivation for people to participate, but helping fight climate change was found to be the main motivator for participants to reduce their food waste. And though participants had a variety of ages, the largest group of participants put themselves in the 60 or older age group, which suggests that people who have more time in general are more likely to track their food waste. And we actually conducted a post-challenge interview, and one of our participants noted that she could not have completed this challenge if she wasn't retired, which introduces an opportunity for us to find ways to reach other demographic groups. And overall, we did this challenge to get a better understanding of household food waste for this upcoming app that's being created by the Kayak team. And though it was a short challenge, participants enjoyed the process and the awareness that it brought. And you can listen to one of our participants in our post-challenge Zoom interview.
I felt like I composted quite a bit and was aware of not throwing things away. But the food waste challenge, I shared earlier, put me even more into that. Though I was a science educator, so getting that quantitative data was really important for me to see my own.
So yeah, that was Sarah, who participated in the challenge, and great words, great way to sum up the challenge for you guys. So moving on to the Waste Watcher, the personal food waste tracking app. Another way to understand more about food waste at home is through our joint work with the Kayak team, which is a capstone project team done by computer science majors at UMaine. We chose the app because the average American has 80 apps and uses 9 daily. 85% of phone time is spent on apps. Apps provide convenient tracking like diet and fitness apps, and we all know that convenience is key when encouraging people to change their habits. Apps also motivate consistent tracking through this convenience and ease of accessibility. So what did we do? We helped create an app that does the following. Waste Watcher stores food waste data by type and weight of waste. The app displays compiled data as users' waste profiles so people can track their behavior over time. The app also provides tips and a leaderboard, similar to our at-home food waste challenge leaderboard, that promotes behavior change and food waste reduction over time. Next slide. We anticipate that this app will be an easy access, efficient, and entertaining way to track food waste compared to simpler pen and paper methods. We also believe an app like this will promote our long-term goals of spreading awareness and changing the food waste behavior of consumers. So here's a list of some resources for curbing household and consumer food waste. More resources can be found on our website as well. Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Flynn. I'm a third-year political science major with a minor in legal studies, and my work focused on food recovery and redistribution as a solution to food waste here in Maine. As Suzanne and other presenters have highlighted already, in Maine, we waste roughly 1/3 of the food we produce, while 1 in 8 adults and 1 in 5 children are food insecure. We are leading New England in food insecurity, and it is time we take that food we're wasting and bring it to the people who need it. But currently, only 3% of surplus food is donated. And it seems simple, just redirect the food towards those in need. But this food doesn't just magically get redistributed. My work has explored two tools to redistribute this food: community fridges and networking, meaning that we connect pantries, donors, and volunteers to more effectively distribute food through systems like Food Rescue US. But first, let's talk about community fridges. A community fridge is a place where local businesses or neighbors can drop off small donations for anyone who needs food to take. I explored the potential of a community fridge here in Orono at the Wilson Center as a way to address food insecurity amongst residents and students. We believe that there is tremendous potential for a community fridge here in Orono. There are multiple successful fridges already in the state of Maine, but looking internationally, there are organizations like Freege.org that have over 400 fridges involved in the United States and beyond. In the environmental organization Hubbub's study of their fridges, an estimated average of 60,000 meals were provided by each fridge over the span of 17 months. This is why we believe it is so important for communities to take action and start their own fridges to provide this kind of accessible support in their own communities. At the core of a community fridge is the idea, take what you need, leave what you can. A key aspect of fridges is their 24/7 accessibility, which allows people to get the food they need conveniently, while also making it easier for businesses and individuals to drop off direct donations. Community fridges can also serve another important purpose in our food access network, decreasing the stigma of getting help by being able to take food whenever they need it with no questions asked. In Kittery, Maine, Whitney Blevin joined together with two friends to found the Seacoast Community Fridge, one of many in Maine. They recognized the need in their community, the food that was going to waste, and they decided to take action. Although our pilot with the Wilson Center faced roadblocks with their insurance, we firmly believe that these fridges are a way for community members to redirect food that would otherwise go to waste and for individuals to have a direct impact. Another tool we identified through our research is the power of networking to increase food access. I developed a pilot working with AIO Rockland Pantry and Food Rescue US to set up a new system that could help increase AIO's reach. When we talk about networking, we mean using a system that connects the donors, the feeding partners, and the volunteers so we can all more seamlessly connect and redistribute food. This is a powerful way to get surplus food to people who need it. AIO provides food to almost 6,000 families and over 15,000 individuals at their market, taking in over 414,000 pounds of food this past year. So our goal with this pilot was to see how using a tool like Food Rescue US could build a food network that can save pantries organizational time and increase their reach. We've seen this in effect with systems like Food Rescue US or Food Rescue Hero across the country, and we want to bring this success and coordination to the state of Maine. Our pilot is still ongoing, but here's a sneak peek at what the Food Rescue US website looks like. It's simple and easy to use. So far, it's helped save time on scheduling and uploading the amount of food rescued, and it provides a central place for the contact information of donors and volunteers. The purpose of this software isn't to replace the interpersonal parts of running pantries or rescuing food. Instead, it is supposed to make information more accessible in a long-term system and help connect immediate food with immediate need. Looking to the future, we believe that this system is a building block that can develop a network of feeding sites, donors, and volunteers so we can increase how much food we redistribute so more than just 3% of surplus food gets donated. Systems like Food Rescue US are a tool we can take advantage of to develop our food access networks to make it work for everyone, the donors, the volunteers, and the pantries. But we thought the incredible executive director at AIO Rockland Pantry put it best. Here's a clip of Joe Ryan from AIO sharing his thoughts on the potential of this pilot.
Right? We're creating these networks and these partnerships, and at the same time, we're creating the management tools to be able to execute all these great ideas that we have. So it's pretty exciting. You know, the application, the data, the collection, it's not as exciting as actually getting out and talking to people, but it's necessary that we have this being developed alongside of the partnerships too.
And lastly, here are some of the resources involved with my pilot, and stay tuned because our website will be updated soon with more information about what we talked about today. And I just want to say thank you all so much for being here and thank you for your time.
Howdy, everybody. My name's Eddie. I'm a first-year student at UMaine Orono studying ecology and environmental sciences, and I'm working on the education solution. My pilot was developed with the child nutrition arm of the Department of Education and conducted with Asa C. Adams Elementary School, Sebago Learners Elementary School, Buxton Center Elementary School, and Lisbon Elementary School. This study included over 1,600 students across the 4 schools. So to start off, I want to talk a little bit about the power of education and its ability to solve Maine's child nutrition and food waste problem. As we heard from Congresswoman Pingree earlier, one of the most effective ways to get this message into the minds of citizens is to educate them at an early age. So, like we repeated before, Maine has 1 in 8 food insecure adults and 1 in 5 food insecure children. And so with our pilot, we really wanted to use youth education as a powerful tool to reduce this food waste. So what did we do? We use these student-directed interventions to reduce food waste in schools, as well as improving student nutrition. So we're tackling both the issue of food waste and child food insecurity. So we did this through a variety of different interventions. And the first one was this thing called the sorting station. So when the children were done with their meal, we would use this in order to collect data on the amount of food waste that children were producing at the 4 elementary schools involved in the study. This is an example of the instructional signage that we had hanging up in the cafeterias. Next slide, please, Hannah. And this is kind of like what it looks like in action. And a lot of folks were skeptical about getting K through 5 kids and having them be able to do this type of separation. So the next clip that we have actually is these kids explaining the process to you.
The research starts with students learning to sort their leftovers at the end of the meal.
First you put your silverware away, and then you dump all like the liquids in a container, and then if you have any like leftover food that you didn't eat, you can put it in the food scrap bin.
So luckily they got pretty excited about it and caught on pretty quickly. Another intervention that we used in the schools was Share Basket, and this is a tool for diverting perfectly good edible food away from the landfill. It's a basket with ice packs inside it to keep the food at the proper temperature, and children can put unopened snacks like crackers, fruit cups, milk inside of it so that other students can take more if they're hungry. We worked with the health department to ensure that we implemented this intervention safely and effectively in all 4 of our schools. The next thing that we did is we made sure to add the option of fruit and vegetable choice at the different elementary schools. So by giving children multiple options for fruits and vegetables, they're actually more likely to pick the ones that they like. And then, that makes them more likely to eat them and not throw them away. We also conducted a food waste audit at the beginning and end of our study. And this involves separating the food waste by fruit, vegetable, and entree type in order to see what the kids were throwing away specifically. We also put up educational posters throughout the cafeteria in order to reinforce the messaging that food is something we use to fuel our bodies and does not belong in the trash. The 2 posters on the left were designed by Hannah, Matthew, and I. We conducted an assembly at each elementary school where we educated students on the importance of reducing food waste because of its social, environmental, and economic benefits. These PowerPoints highlighted the ways that we can feed more people, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and save money by reducing food waste. We also used a series of educational videos that the children were shown during their homeroom periods to continue to reinforce these key ideas about food waste reduction. Students were shown 3 videos with additional videos available for further education. On top of this, we made progress charts that showed the children how much waste they were producing each week. And these acted as a scale for them to measure how effectively they were reaching their goal of reducing food waste. On the screen, you can see an example, and then you can see what it looks like up in the school. And we also had a poster competition at the end of the study to allow the children to express and generate their own thoughts on what a good food waste reduction message would be. as you can see, lots of the kids really loved it and they ended up making some amazing designs. Now I'm going to hand it over to Andrew really quick because he partnered with me on this to do the tracking and measuring. So Andrew, if you want to share about these results real quick.
Absolutely. Yeah, so during the course of this study, we used a Google form for data collection and ease of collecting data from the nutrition directors. During the week, the kitchen staff would fill out a paper tracking sheet similar to the one that we had developed for the Department of Corrections. And they would collect the weights of the food waste as well as the liquid waste. And that data was then given to the nutrition directors in each facility and was uploaded to the Google form. From there, we were able to perform our analysis on a per school basis to identify where the interventions that Eddie was doing with his education were improving on each school's food waste. Throughout the course of the study, we saw that all the facilities had recognized a decrease in food waste. And these results were on an average weekly basis, which accounted for early release days, snow days, or professional development days where students were not served a lunch meal. Larger schools saw a more drastic decrease in food waste as they have more mouths to feed, but smaller schools were more consistent with keeping their food waste numbers to a minimum. Associated with the average weekly cost we assigned based off the EPA's cost per pound of food was $1.17 per pound. There, each school saw a high and low of which weeks they wasted the most and the least. Most schools saw totals above $100 and saw a difference in the cost around $30 to $50 per week. As seen on the right, Sebago was one of the smaller schools in the study, and their difference was minimal as the fluctuations in their food waste was never more than 10 pounds per week on average. To bring each school on a more comparable level, we wanted to recognize the per student per day food waste number. Here we see that all schools had decreasing figures from the beginning to the end of the study, and each school went from wasting roughly half a pound per student per day and was decreased weekly per student by roughly half a pound per week per student. The reduction in the fruit and veggie waste was greater than the overall reduction in the food waste in the 3 out of the 4 schools. And the 4th school had a fruit and veggie well, it was on par with overall reduction. For schools that served packaged or whole fruit, some of the fruit and veggie reduction could be due to the share basket recovery. And in future studies, we would measure the share basket fruit and veggie at the end of the day to assess whether the overall reduction of food waste is due to eating or sharing.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate your help with the quantitative results and for that interpretation. So we also collected a little bit of qualitative data and we got some testimony from the people that we were working with. A common theme that we saw throughout the study was that, you know, a lot of the people that we were working with, like nutrition directors, you know, they have very busy jobs and very important jobs in these schools by feeding our children while they're at school. And they don't have a ton of time for this education piece, but they consistently reported that this education piece is the biggest part of, you know, making their job easier and reducing food waste. We also heard from janitorial staff that the interventions that we were implementing were making their job easier as well. And we also had comments from kitchen staff saying that they were seeing kids, you know, take food that they actually wanted and then eating it. They're more likely to eat it when they're picking things that they actually wanted. And also we sent out a pre and post study survey to families. And this showed a lot of interesting response about how parents were saying their kids were coming home and talking to them about the food waste program, and they're excited about it. And I think that's a really great impact that we had with this study. You know, it's important that children bring this education home, and, you know, it doesn't only get the messaging to the kids, it also gets it to their families. And, you know, a really interesting statistic from that was that 75% of respondents reported their family discussing food waste recently as a result of this study. So there's a huge potential for new elementary schools to start similar programs, and all of our resources like the posters, the signage, the videos that we use are going to be available in the coming weeks on our website, and any questions can be directed to me or Suzanne. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Hannah, and I'm a senior at UMaine, double majoring in English and environmental sciences and ecology. I've been at Food Rescue MAINE for 2 years now, and I'm a senior intern. And in addition to Eddie's incredible work with Maine students, we can also reduce our food waste through effective communication to Maine's adult consumers. As Shelley Pingree said earlier this morning, the most important thing Food Rescue Maine can do to reduce food waste is to keep making this issue front and center and to repeatedly reinforce how much of a social, economic, and environmental issue this problem is. So, why is food waste education important? ReFed cites that consumer education campaigns are a key action area, stating that food waste education can have a $6.1 billion financial benefit and can divert 1.4 million tons of food waste from landfills. Since 2019, we've been doing this work with our website, but this year we chose to prioritize expanding our social media reach as well. Research shows that social media is a reliable way to reach Maine consumers, with Maine and New Hampshire residents ranking in the top 5 for social media usage in the US. And 75% of marketers find that social media has also increased their web traffic. So this year, our goals for communication were to build education and action around food waste using social media and our website. So what did we do? To achieve these goals, we use social media best practices like using organizational tools as those shown in the upper left-hand corner. We also collaborated with social media partner organizations to mutually expand our reach. And as Claudia from the EPA recommended earlier this morning, we have also leveraged social media campaigns that many of you are likely involved in, such as the Food Waste Prevention Week 2023, which is actually going on right now, and the Maine Home Food Waste Challenge 2023 that Hallie mentioned earlier in her presentation. In addition to the work done this year on our social media, the Food Rescue Maine website has undergone an extreme makeover. We've also used our social media campaigns to direct traffic to the website, and we kept our content fresh by creating new content, like the blog posts that were written by each of our student interns this year. All right, so using these social media best practices, our Facebook reach has increased by 96% since last year, reaching a total of over 1,600 accounts. Additionally, our Instagram reach has increased by almost 2,000% since last year, reaching under 9,000 accounts. And as of last year, we had created our TikTok account, but we hadn't posted anything yet. We began posting in May of 2022, and our highest performing post since then has received over 3,000 views. And I've included that TikTok here so you can all see what we've been doing.
Bendy carrots. Store in water for at least 30 minutes. Good as new.
And this increase in social media engagement has also greatly improved our website traffic. As you can see here, our website page views have increased by 450% since April of last year, with last year having an all-time high of 68 page views per day compared to this year's all-time high of 306 page views per day. So here are some of the resources that you can find available on our website. And to see the resource, I've also included our link at the bottom here. To see these resources yourself and see how all the things that our team has been working so hard on. You can use your phone camera to actually scan this QR code, and it'll bring you to our website, blog, and all of our social media accounts. And stay tuned in a couple of weeks to see this year's student interns work updated on the website as well. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I really appreciate you all listening to us and letting us take up your time today. And it's really exciting to see so many people also excited about food waste solutions. Thank you.
And since we're at time, I know we don't have time for questions, but those of you that presented today, thank you so much for being engaged in the chat. And hopefully most of you feel your questions have been answered. And we did collect a few of those that weren't. I thought I'd just take 30 seconds and have some summary of nice notes that our presenters may have missed, although a lot of them caught it. Kathy said Hannaford is the best partner. Sam, I love your use of burlap bags to scrap dogs. Michelle said, go Preble Street. I am inspired. You've gained at least one volunteer. Harry said, Eddie, this is amazing. and so many other positive sentiments. So thank you, students, success stories, and our keynote speakers for giving engaging material that the chatters and participants found insightful and inspiring.
Yes, and thank you, Travis, for your artful management of the chat. I mean, it is actually a specialty on its own. So thank you, and thank you for the levels of engagement across the board. And thank you to our presenters because of what you presented. I'm sure that we have that level of engagement, and to all the student team. I know we've been working on all of this, but you impressed even me. I mean, I've seen your presentations, and you guys did a fantastic job. And so I just want you to know that all that hard work was worth it. And so thank you to everybody and for coming. We hope that you learned things today. We hope that you know now where at least to reach us if you need any help in the food waste space. We will stay after. I know that, probably a lot of you have to go. We promised 10 to noon, so we will definitely let you go. But if you have any questions, we'll stay around a little bit. I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know. I mean, if we'll still keep the chat. Travis, do you think that's the best way to handle sort of this section of it, just to continue with the chat?
We can open up the videos and unmute people, Suzanne, if you want to do it like that and do it back and forth.
Yeah, I don't really, I mean, it depends on how many people stay, I guess. So, but we'll just see if you, however you would like to do this. This is sort of our new thing, this after hours, and just an opportunity to have the students engage. They did a lot of work. There's a lot more details about the projects that they did. And so if there's anybody particularly interested in any aspect, somebody here from the hospital healthcare industry, from the food service sector, schools, we have had a lot of experiences. The students have been out there this year doing a lot of great work. So, if you, I don't know if anybody has any specific questions